Welcome back to a Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. The Republican Party as a whole has seen itself as the champion of the working man and the blue collar worker for quite some time now. And despite being probably one of the most out of touch and disconnected people from said blue collar worker, Donald Trump ran on a platform of bringing back blue collar jobs and being the man who wanted to help these people come back. And large swaths of them took that bait and elevated him back into the presidency under that promise that he would bring back blue collar jobs that had been lost under the previous administration. But unfortunately for them, this is Donald Trump we're talking about, and if his mouth is moving, he's lying. So he had no intention to fulfill that promise. What they're seeing is the exact opposite. Since he took office back in January, almost every sector of blue-collar workers have been in decline and have seen no sign in coming back up. Across manufacturing, transportation, warehousing, mining, utilities, they've all been down and have just continued to decline, according to Labor Department data. And with stuff like AI being an omnipresent threat to entire sectors of those blue-collar workers, that doesn't seem like much of a surprise. And this decline of blue-collar workers is going to be a serious problem for the administration, even if they don't seem to want to acknowledge it. Since they've built themselves up as the working man's party, blue-collar workers have become much of the Republican Party's base. So if they see that they are being constantly abandoned by this administration, they are much less likely to keep voting in more Republicans that are just enabling the administration's abandonment of them and not promising to actually fix any of the problems that they are seeing right now. This, of course, could potentially be a huge win for Democrats since they're currently experiencing a surge in support and electoral wins, and much how we saw a disenfranchisement with the Democratic Party pushing many voters away from Democrats to Republicans, resulting in a win for Donald Trump in the recent presidential election. The political winds are once again pushing away from the party in power, when it seems obvious they're not addressing the real issues that the people are suffering and instead seem to have their focus elsewhere. And while the seeming collapse of blue-collar jobs under the current president is certainly a win for Democrats, these aren't just statistics or data points on a sheet or political capital to be won and lost. These are actual people with actual lives. This is a serious issue that has to be dealt with, not just treated as a political football to be passed between the two parties to see who is stuck holding it when the problem really gets serious. But in a lot of ways, that's how we got here in the first place. Politicians on both sides, yes, mostly Republicans, but both sides treat these people as something to be used for their own political ends. Oh no, those people over there don't care about you and what you're going through. We care. Come to us. Republicans were very successful in painting Democrats as the party of the elite who don't care about the common people. They only care about those at the top and what they want. And while there was certainly a grain of truth to that, the obvious reality is the Republican Party is more catering to the elite than anyone could possibly have imagined. Though, given the fact that it is now headed by Donald Trump, a man who is all about catering to the elites, maybe they probably should have. But with the blue-collar job sector tanking the way it is, the real question is, what is the end game here? Where is this all leading towards? That would depend largely on who you ask. Some would say that what the end goal is here is the return of feudalism, a dominance of society by a small, powerful elite with a lack of social mobility and a huge disparity between the rights and legal protection between those at the top and those at the bottom. Some would even say we're already getting a taste of that in current society. But this would be taken to an extreme where everyone works for the upper class and basically are only able to take whatever they give them with no sort of worker protection, no sort of collective bargaining, none of that. It's all laboring directly for the elites. And those elites dictate what people can have, and those people will just take it gratefully. The return of company towns and company store, where the workers are given a place to live, but forced to subsist on whatever the company gives them, and aren't even paid in money anymore. They're only paid in company script, where they can buy things at the company-run stores, but nowhere else. What some would call slavery with extra steps. Well, that's an unbelievably bleak outlook on our collective future. The worrying part is it really doesn't seem that far-fetched. Yes, forcing society into basically indentured servitude to the elite class does seem a bit extreme. It does sometimes feel like the road towards that is being paved in real time. Some are saying forget extra steps, just go to slavery actual. The plan, at least in part, is to swell the prison populations in private prisons, not only lining the pockets of the rich, but also now creating a huge pool of virtually free labor. Because lest we forget, the 13th Amendment may have abolished slavery, but made an exception for prison labor. So if the question is how do you keep profits going up when employment numbers are going down, is you create a huge population of labor that you don't have to pay. So it's pure profit. The owners make money and don't have to pay for labor because labor is free if they are using the literal slave labor that comes out of prisons. So if the seeming push for a permanent underclass didn't seem dystopian enough, it seems now we may have to fear the push for a literal slave class, one which the 13th Amendment does not protect against exploitation. Either of those outcomes seem pretty awful, and they don't have to be inevitable, but the way we are going right now, it certainly feels like there is no way out of some bad end because things are looking pretty bleak already and only seem to be getting bleaker as time goes on. And it seems far too easy to point fingers and say, oh, well, if we had only voted for Kamala, we wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't have to be looking towards these dark futures. But I'm not entirely convinced that that's true. Undoubtedly, some things would be different, and I would like to believe that they would be different in a good way. But a lot of the factors that have gone into this blue-collar job collapse are not directly attributable to one party or another, or who happens to be in the presidency at that time. Both Donald Trump's presidential campaigns ran on a platform of bringing American manufacturing and blue-collar workers back to America, and in places that basically depended entirely on manufacturing and other similar blue-collar industries. That message, understandably, really resonated and really got them to go out and vote for him because he promised that he was going to help them survive. But what that, of course, was unfortunately ignoring was the fact that American manufacturing has declined over the last 70 or so years because the U.S. economy has shifted away from being a manufacturing-based one to being a service-based economy. The capitalists are having to pay American workers fair wages was too expensive when they could simply pay overseas workers far less and still increase their profits year over year. So the reality is that a promise to bring manufacturing back to America rings hollow because it ignores, likely purposefully so, reason why American manufacturing left America in the first place. And you can't help but really feel for these communities that are so rooted in industries that no longer hold the vital place in American society and culture that it once did. And that without them, these places are just going to be wiped off the map because they just don't have anything else. It's one of the reasons, despite being a massively antiquated form of fuel, we still have so much of a focus on coal in this country because we have so many rural communities that are so based in coal that if we eliminated coal entirely, they would be completely destroyed. People's lives would be ended because they would have no way of living without it. And what it feels like we may be seeing is that on a grander scale, as industries lean heavier and heavier on automation and AI, why have human workers that you have to pay for health insurance and give time off when they get sick or injured, when you could just program a computer and some robots to do their job and maybe just keep on some engineers and technicians to make sure the computers and the robots are running efficiently at all times. When you get down to it, what this is really a capitalism problem. Human labor is becoming devalued in a way that we have never yet seen. Those corporate elites that the Republicans seem to endlessly rail against are perfectly content to see the blue-collar labor market tank, because no matter which way it comes out, they seem to come out the winners, whether it be a totally subservient underclass, a slave class, or just replacing them all with robots. As long as their profits keep going up, they do not care about the labor shortage. They do not care about the plight of the humans as long as the money keeps coming in. And addressing that really shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should really be something that both sides can agree is a problem that left unchecked will only result in our ruin. But as long as it's framed as a red versus blue thing, it can be endlessly spun back and forth, while those at the top just laugh their way to the bank every time. I'm not entirely sure where this is all going, but until some real systemic social change occurs to change the direction of this ship, we all have definitely some dark times ahead. And ignoring the warnings now for what lay ahead can only lead to bad outcomes. And that's definitely not the future I want for any of us. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time, when I cut you off, another slice of news.